Hello everybody, Всем привет. Today I have just been working on the castle screen, and I've got a couple of staged builds to kind of show where things are at. So currently we can click on either the locator or when our mouse is over the castle and it will bring up this screen. Now, what's missing? There's a little bit of animation of this river, at least in this case for the barbarian, and there's no tent or castle here, and there's no creature structures. So my goal for today is to basically be able to populate these creature structures. Now, I've been reverse engineering the maps for this game, but I have not been able to figure out yet where the initial state of the castle is stored. Um, it varies a little bit. I think there's a little bit of random generation, but it varies by level. So it's not like every single castle in every single map starts out with the same initial structures. And so it's possible that it's not stored in the map and the game has it in the executable like hard coded for each map, but I I'm like I don't know, that's possible. I wouldn't have done it that way if I was programming the game, and I'm hesitant to believe that New World Computing would have done that back in 1994 when they were coding this. Um, anyway, let's dig into it. So this was the initial state when I started today. This here is what I put into the AI. So I've also recently gone through in one of my previous videos. I guess I would call it my most boring video. I broke up my game main C++ file into a number of different smaller files that were each a little more focused on a certain element of the game. Like, so one was about rendering, one is about loading the resources, which would be things like the ICN files, which are the actual game files, which I can show you some examples of ICN files here, especially stuff that we're about to use. So these ICN files are inside the heroes.agg, which is like the main graphics game pack. And inside these we have all sorts of sprites, and for the each, like what we're going to be looking at today is the creature structures. So FRST is forest. This is like the cottage, and it looks like there's some animation for it. Cottage is where you buy dwarves. This is hard to see, but this is actually the archery range. It's a strangely wide, it's just a very strange thing because it's mostly over here, and then there's this tiny little red pixel over here, which I haven't really ever noticed that on the map, but it's there. And you know, we have, let's say we have our Phoenix Tower here as well. So but anyway, we're gonna be populating. That's the goal today, is to populate this town image with those creature structures. So I basically explained to the AI. I've just added a castle screen. At the bottom of the castle screen, I want to add a sprite from Big Bar, which first of all let me show you what I'm missing. So we load up our original game here. Look, there isn't a bar here at the bottom, which, okay, my game here is frozen, so I had just played through a game to test something, and I was able to beat the game in 30 days, and I think the original demo would let you play for 28 days. When I first played this game, I had the demo on the Might&magic trilogy, and I was most interested in trying to beat the game in 28 days. So I was always trying to do whatever I could to move faster. And it's even playing it on the easiest level on Claw. It's the enemy heroes are just so wily that they run around and make you chase them for a couple of extra days. So anyway, we're in here. And see, what I wanted to show you is this big bar at the bottom here. It's missing on my other example. And when you highlight things, this says tavern, thieves guild, recruit peasant, recruit archer, castle. Well, it gives you some different things: view hero, kingdom overview, etc. And it's also on the bottom of the hero screen. So I should actually probably add this to the bottom of the hero screen. I don't know if I don't think I do. Let me see if I have it on here. Oh, it actually was on. That's interesting. So the hero screen actually has it built in. So that's interesting. I didn't notice that earlier. But anyway, we're gonna pull in the big bar. So that's my build directory. So let me show you big bar first. This is what the sprite looks like. So it's basically this, and then it's reflected across this axis here to generate that bar. So I basically explained that it's a 320 wide by 20 high pixel, and I want to display the mirrored version, X offset 0, and then the unmirrored version, X offset 320 at the bottom of the screen. The Y offset from the top is 460 because the screen is 640 by 480, and this is the bottom 20 pixels of that. There will eventually be text overlaid on it as the mouse moves around, but we'll worry about that later. And then I want to add the resources and the sprites to that castle screen, and I will synchronize it with the game state. The game state has a few variables that I want to read. This is castle, which is true if it's a castle, and if it's false, it's a town. And then I made a data structure of 16 bits of built structures. And part of the reason for doing that is there's 4 levels of Mage Guild, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there's 8 for these general structures that are uniform to each town. And then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 6 creature dwellings. And then you can have a castle and a tent. I kind of have that. It's a little redundant with the is castle variable. So I don't actually need those last 2 bits to explain, because the minimum a town will have a tent, so I don't actually need anything to represent the tent. And if it's built to a castle, I have this is castle Boolean bit to represent it. So it's a little bit redundant to have those extra 2. Yeah, and then I initialized it initially to CFFF. I ended up changing this to FFF just to have a fully built castle, but I just threw in a value there. Although I said built fully, and anyway, the AI gave me this hex value instead of what I asked for there. So that's it's random. So the display structures that are in line with the bit mask in buildings. If the bit mask has a value of 1, the structure is considered built in the game state. If the bit mask has a value of 0, the structure is considered not built. I'm being a little redundant to my description, but that just helps the AI kind of double check and get it right. The castle should display the structures that are built and the sprites that are overlaid over the existing I said hero screen, but I meant castle screen. I do that sometimes. The only special case is the is castle variable. If it's false, and I kind of go through that, I realized at this point it was redundant. The rendering order is important. So there should be a tent, and then a castle, and then some of these other structures. Because if you don't build the tavern here, or if you built a tavern and the Thieves Guild, but you build the Thieves Guild afterward, you don't want the Thieves Guild to render over the tavern. You want, there's sort of the rendering order of these structures is important. Same thing with this thatched hut. If you don't have a Thieves Guild, the thatched hut should show. If you built the Thieves Guild first and then you built the thatched hut, you should, it should render in this order, that the thatched hut is behind the Thieves Guild. And then there are general structures for each town, which are these: the Mage Guild, Thieves Guild, Tavern, Shipyard, Well. And the Mage Guild levels 1 through 4. And I basically explain what each of these looks like. And I actually I actually created a file here. Let me open that up. And I'll pull it up in Excel because it displays prettier in Excel than in my text editor. So I created a generic structure here for explaining which faction, which structure name, and then which ICN file has each thing. So in almost all files, it has, we have like mountain tent, mountain castle, mountain D4, which is creature type D5, which I guess would be hydras here for the warlock. When I first created this too, I had come up with a system here for the Mage Guild, but basically I harvested from every single spec file. I harvested the offset X and Y and the width and height for each of these elements. And I want to show you the Mage Guild because that's actually the most kind of tricky and interesting one of these. It's the only component that sort of changes with multiple structures. Everything else is just a single image. Some of them have some animations, and I can show you an example of that later. But this is the base structure of the Mage Guild, which you can maybe see back over here. Let's build a Mage Guild, and then you can see. So we have this Mage Guild here, and that uses 00 and 001. And then if we build the Mage Guild level 2, it's going to use these two on top of 001. And then it's actually going to use this one, and these. Oh, hold on. How about these? This is going to be the Mage Guild level 3. And then Mage Guild level 4 would be these. And the reason for why I'm selecting different ones, why wouldn't you just use this one and this one? Well, because the way they're specified in the specification is it gives you the offsets, and mainly the Y offset here shifts. So where these images are located relative to the top of the screen is in here, and the heights are slightly different. Like the two tops of the Mage Guild 3 and Mage Guild level 4 are 42 high, and the Mage Guild level 1 and level 2 are 43 high, for example. So there's just slight differences in the image. I'm sure they could have done something a little more efficient with the graphics, but this was just how they did it at the time. And so I specified to the, this was basically a CSV file I created for the AI from looking at all of these. So this was the most time-consuming piece of the of this step, basically. I was building this out, and I wasn't really sure if it was going to work. Sure, let's save it, and then so we passed that, and then I expressed that these 8 bits are the general structures, and then the second 8 bits, let me actually go back and pull that up again. So I basically say these first 8 bits are, so that's actually bits 0 through 7 are the first 8 bits. So this is the Mage Guild, Shipyard, Thieves Guild, Tavern, Well, that kind of stuff. And then for each faction, I have another 8 bits of other structures that can be built. And the tent and the castle, initially I had set these to unused, but I decided to just leave them in there because I needed to specify, like, each castle looks a little different, and so the images are they're slightly different sized. You see that the tent is 55 by 65 for the knight and 236 by 124, and this one for the barbarian is 60 by 48 and 309 by 123. So they're about the same size but a little different. So just to put it all in one file and try and get it in one shot with the AI, I basically just crammed them in there. And I explained that it's kind of redundant. We don't necessarily need the castle bits, but their unique offsets, offset X, offset Y, width, and height for each faction are needed because it's different for each one. And then I make a note about rendering and the rendering order, that the castle should be rendered first. Actually, the tent or castle should be rendered first, and then other structures would be rendered after, so that the order is correct. And then I explained for the Mage Guild, there's multiple sprites depending on the layer to be built. I guess I meant to say level to be built, but I was thinking about rendering layers here. And they are listed with multiple image values in the ICN file, and they're the same for each castle. We just create a function to process the Mage Guild drawing as it is the most complex. And then I want to read these sprite resources and render them in the castle screen to verify this is working. So it started out, that's a pretty long prompt. It started out, it says, yep, I'm going to look at these files, and oh, the buildings field is set in map CPP. And then it's like, okay, I'm just gonna add an initialization override. And I'm like, oh, no, don't do that. So I hit stop on the AI, and I dropped in my map files and said, here you go. Now you can initialize the buildings field for the castle structures game data. So it did. It initially was set at 0. It set it to CFFF. Just made a point to do that in that file. Then it added the constants for the location of the big bar sprite, so this purple bar at the bottom, building bit definitions, per sprite data types, and resource storage fields. So basically a lot of the housekeeping stuff, it's just auto-generating based on the specification that I created, which is this up here, this HOMM structures. This doesn't look quite as nice as in Excel, but it's just a CSV file of all the values, basically a lot of repetitive X, Y, width, height, offset values. So anyway, it went through that, and then it loaded all the new ICNs, and I had dropped in resources up here, but should actually double check that those are being loaded correctly. I may do that at the end here. But anyway, it did some building, ran into a tool usage limit on Claude, so I just had to hit continue. Updates the castle screen. So it's doing a separate rendering of the castle screen, and then it's updating the architecture documentation as well. And let's see what we get here. So we get our castle screen documents, we get a map, and we get an architecture update. And let me show you what that build looked like. So this was the build. So the first thing I saw was, I clicked on this and I saw mostly built castle. It's missing the Cyclops, and it's missing the trolls, and that's because I selected CFF, which didn't have the top two creature structures. It had castle and tent checked, but it didn't have that. And even though we're landlocked here, yes, we have a shipyard. We're not supposed to, but we do. And again, I haven't figured out where these are specified in the game, where these initial building states are. And I would expect that that is where the shipyard is, like, where it's determined that the shipyard is not able to be built. It could also be in the executable. It could also be actual game logic that checks, like, hey, is this castle near some water tiles? And if it's not, then it prevents you from being able to build the shipyard. Now, there was a bug that I ran into, and it's this, that doesn't look like the right castle. And what had happened is I had a copy-paste error in my initial file. If I actually go up here, you can see it. It's not in my current version of the file, but the file that I submitted, the warlock has the same plains tent, plains castle as the barbarian. So that was just a typo. This should be mountain tent, mountain castle. Everything else for the warlock was mountain. Well, the AI didn't notice that, or took my word for it, or whatever. Human error caused this bug. So I wanted to fix that, and I was just kind of looking around to see, okay, are there any other rendering errors? You know, it actually looks okay. You know, I guess this castle's in front of the nest. So, but maybe the nest just, actually it looks like, no, the nest rendered over the castle. So the nest rendered after, which is the correct order. But let me just run this a couple more times. Let's see what other castle structures we can get, and see if there's any rendering order issues. That seems okay. The knight. Yeah, I think, yeah, so here we have a couple rendering order issues. One, we have the thatched hut is rendering over the Thieves Guild. And here we have part of the armory is rendering over the blacksmith. And, you know, I was like, huh, okay, that's, so the rendering order, we need to make it so these general structures render last. We also need to make it so that this one renders before this one. So, let's think about how to do that. I also want to see if we can get a sorceress. So I'm just going to run this once or twice here, quick. Rolling the dice each time until we get a sorceress. We may have to be at this for a little while. Couple more shot. Here we go. So in the sorceress, you notice some of the animations are missing, like the sprite's leg is dangling and there's no smoke coming from the chimney here. So look at this, the cottage is rendering over the Thieves Guild. That's interesting, huh? All right, so what I then did next was I realized, let's see, we're all the way down here. This is great and almost working completely, but I need you to help me fix the faction-specific rendering to render in reverse order. So the first thing that I did was I didn't use the AI for this. I just went in and changed the ordering of the rendering. Let's see if I can pull that up for you and just show you the code. So this is the current version of the code, but so initially it was doing the general structures first, then the mage guild, and then the faction specific creature dwellings. I wanted to do the mage guild first, then I made the faction specific creature dwellings, and then I rendered the general structures afterward. So that was a manual change that I made, but I still noticed there were some issues with, so I also went in and changed the initialized value to all Fs, to show me all of the creature structures that could be built. And let me pull up what that looks like. So I ran this, and in this case it looks, there's actually no issues here really with the warlock castle. Let's see if we get a sorceress here. So Do you see it? Do you see it? It's very subtle. It's very, very subtle. But this is a little overlap issue with the treehouse and the Phoenix Tower. So that needs to be fixed. And I think this archery range also puts some red dot somewhere out here. I can't even see it where it is. And so I wanted to make sure that that was behind anything else that got built. So what I ended up doing was changing this to I asked the AI, I said, help me fix this specific rendering section to do them in a different order. So I explained, I already changed these manually, and I gave it my updated castle screen. And then, for example, for the castle for creature dwelling 0 to 5, it should render in this order. So I wanted it to do the archery range, then the peasant hut, then the armory, then then the jousting arena, then the armory, then the blacksmith, and then the cathedral on top. So the knight's castle is probably the most complex in terms of the rendering order. So this isn't a hard ask for it. It just sets up an initial dwelling order, and then iterates through that. I did a quick test. So the knight, I gave it the initial one I had come up with. Barbarian and warlock are unchanged, and I changed the sorceress a little bit to render the archery range, and then the Phoenix Tower, and then the others in order. So let's go and look at the current build here, which is this one, and see now the knight is rendering correctly. We don't have this jousting arena over this. We don't have this other weird box issue. We don't have any strangeness here. So I'm pretty sure we've got the rendering order now correct for the castle. And the only thing that I might want to do is change where the images are being loaded. So I may want to move the loading of the images to the resources file if they're not already there. So that's basically the last change I might make. But for now, we just got the castle images showing up on our test versions, and you know, that I'm pretty happy with that. It actually went pretty quickly, pretty smooth. The main input was really just giving it a file with all of that information. And at some point, I'm going to do this, you know, the other screens that I need to create be things like the Mage Guild. You know, that's going to be important. And if you'll notice, it just overwrites the top chunk of this screen, puts this stone backing here. We get a little visual of what that Mage Guild is, which I guess I'll have to specify from some other offset specific to this screen. And then a bunch of the scrolls, and you know, there's something to do there. We're going to have something else here similar for, you know, the build screen. And then we have also these recruit dialogue boxes, yet another half screen, and then this, you know, we have these weird dialogue boxes too. So there's a bunch of interactions and interactive menus and things that need to be created, but we're getting there. You know, we're getting the basic graphics in order, and you know, I feel like we're making good progress. So thanks for watching, and as always, let me know if you know any castle names or hero short names. I did notice that Crag Hack's short name is Crag.